It was shaping up to be one of Joe Biden's worst weeks yet. Humiliated in Virginia and nearly so in New Jersey. Democrats woke up on Wednesday morning reeling from rejection. Then came the news that the president's approval ratings had collapsed, with a good share of his own voters saying he's done a worse job than they expected, and another two-thirds hoping he doesn't run again. By all rights, Biden's radical agenda was done for. It was kaput. Until Friday night, when for some unknown reason, 13 Republicans decided to hand the sinking party a life raft. Just when it seemed that the House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, was on the verge of a stinging setback, the GOP came to her rescue, voting in favor of another bill America can't afford, Biden's $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill. So where does that put us with the reconciliation bill? What's next on Capitol Hill? Joining us now is Harris Alic, Washington Times Capitol Hill reporter. He joins us by phone. Harris, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Tony, thank you so much for having me on. It's always a pleasure. You're absolutely right. President Biden's agenda is stalled. He campaigned as being this master of the Senate, this legislative taskmaster, someone who's able to push his agenda through, and he has significant issues with his own party. This infrastructure bill, which a decade ago would have been incredibly popular and would have flown through, took about 9 months to pass. It's a bill that is incredibly flawed, but a bill that wasn't really even going to become law unless 13 Republicans hadn't stepped in and saved him from the opposition of his own party. So while the administration is taking a victory lap on this and saying it's such a big victory for them, in reality, Democrats handed President Biden a defeat because moving forward, they've shown that this small progressive faction within the House is emboldened and can essentially kill any piece of legislation moving forward if they choose to, because you're not going to be able to find 13 Republican votes for any sort of Green New Deal style legislation to tackle climate change. You're not going to be able to find 13 Republican votes to expand the welfare state. You're not going to be able to find 13 Republican votes to deal with the bevy of issues the Democrats want to deal with moving forward. This is not going to be proud of. This shows the president has a divided party, a party that is not willing to work together, and it's very, very difficult to bridge that divide between AOC and Joe Manchin. And Joe Biden doesn't seem up to the task right now.
Well, let's talk about that, Harris. Where all right, they got the first of the two bills, the smaller bill, the 1.2 trillion. They got it through with 13 Republican votes. The Progressive Caucus not voting for it, at least a large portion of them. So now we turn to the bigger bill, where we're waiting for a congressional score on it, the budget office, to give us an idea what the final tally is for it, somewhere in the neighborhood of $2 trillion. So will they be able to pass this? Will the progressives vote for this since it's some of their key items have been stripped out?
Well, that's nearly the $1.75 trillion question now, is whether or not Mr. Biden's party is going to hold. It's actually insane that Speaker Nancy Pelosi wanted to hold a vote on this bill last week when Democrats had just finished writing it, and it's still by no means final. It runs about 2,000 pages. They claim that it only costs $1.75 trillion, but a lot of their own moderates are saying that's probably not true because you have an expansion of Medicare in there. You've got prescription drug pricing reform. You've got paid family leave. All of these things that President Biden had to jettison because they weren't able to pass the Senate are now back in this House bill. This bill, by all means, is dead on arrival when it comes into the Senate, but Speaker Nancy Pelosi is pushing her caucus to vote for it anyway. And a lot of these moderate Democrats are going to potentially say, well, we're not going to do this. They're going to potentially draw some red lines here because after Virginia, after New Jersey, I think they realize that no Democrat is safe out there when it comes to their reelection bids. And this $1.75 trillion, $2 trillion, $4 trillion bill, however much it ends up costing, is by no means a done deal. Look, it's taking Democrats 9 months to even come up with a compromise framework for a bill, and a lot of the Democrats are saying it's still not acceptable. So I don't know how they're going to be able to get this done, especially given that they have a government funding deadline coming in December. They've got appropriation bills on the way. They've got a Christmas break, and then they've got all of next year's legislative session. And if this bill took them 9 months just to figure out kind of what the broad contours are, and 9 months to get to the point where they don't even have a deal I can't imagine a deal's going to come through in the next few weeks.
It's going to be very, very interesting to watch. Harris, Alic, thanks so much for joining us. Always great to hear your insights on what's happening on Capitol Hill.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, Tony.